Okay, here is 8th grade, 7.1.3, and I'm not really going to use the whiteboard because there's a lot of graphing in this one, and I already drew the graphs, and I thought it would be easier to just show you my papers instead of drawing every single graph, because that would be time consuming. So 7.1.3, what is the relationship? Identifying and describing association. I'm reading the introduction. When is it reasonable to make a prediction? For example, when you know the height of a tree, can you predict the size of its leaves? Or if you know the outdoor temperature for the day, can you predict the number of glasses of water you will drink during the day? So in the last lesson, we found some data sets were related and others were not. And in this lesson, we'll look at different situations and decide if they show relationships that allow you to make predictions. So as we work today, use these questions to help us direct our discussion. When one value goes up, what happens to the other one? Is there a relationship between one thing changing and the other changing? And can I make a prediction? So we're starting with 7-23, and we have quite a bit of problems to get through today, so we're just gonna get right into it. 7.23 says, the students in Mr. Carl's science class have been experimenting with different factors that they think may affect how tall a plant will grow. Each team planted seeds in several pots using different experimental conditions. With your team, or with me, we're going to read the questions that the students investigated, and then we're going to write a prediction or a hypothesis for the results for each experiment. It says, assume that all other variables are controlled, meaning they will not affect the experimental outcome. Write your hypothesis so that it indicates a directional relationship between the independent and dependent variables. So in other words, we're just writing a hypothesis to show how both variables, both items in the question relate to each other. So for part A, it says, does the amount of fertilizer affect the plant height? So for what I put for part A, and this is kind of like hypotheses are like educated guesses, so you could have written something different, but I wrote, and I'm going to show you, hopefully, if this works. Oh no. Oh boy. I'm going to try and show you. Oh boy, that might not work. If you can see this, I wrote, as the amount of fertilizer increases, the plant height increases. So that was my hypothesis, was that as you put more fertilizer in the plant pot, the plant height might increase. That was my guess. So that would be part A. That was my sentence. That's my hypothesis for part A. Part B says, does how deep the seed is planted in each pot affect the plant height? So I just went ahead and made a prediction that the deeper the seed, the shorter the plant. And I was just thinking, I don't know, what was my thinking there? That the stem or the root has a longer distance to travel, so maybe more of the plant is underneath the soil. There's really no right or wrong answer, as long as you're relating the two variables inside the question together. Part C says, does the number of seeds in each pot affect plant height? Let me see. So I said the greater number of seeds, the taller the plant. Who knows? You could have said the opposite. Doesn't really matter. It does matter, it's just not. There's no right or wrong. Part D says, does the size of the pot affect the plant height? And I just took a guess that the bigger the pot, the taller the plant. Who knows? And then part E, does the number of hours of sunlight per day affect the plant height? And I said, the more sunlight, the taller the plant. Because I thought that more photosynthesis would occur with the sun providing plant energy. Okay, so that was part A through E of problem 723. Now for 724, it wants you to graph. And it says to do it on graph paper, but I don't have graph paper, so I just did it on my plain blue paper. And it says, after 3 weeks, the teams measured the heights of the plants and recorded the data. The Team 1 data table and the question Team 1 investigated are included below. So question 1 was, does the amount of fertilizer affect the plant height? So it says to clearly label your axes, mark the scale at equal intervals, and title your graph appropriately. So here is I'm going to try and show you mine, because it gives you the table. So if it gives you the table, you have the coordinate points to plot on your graph. So I'm going to try and show mine. Hopefully it shows up. Oh boy. Okay, unfortunately, the camera reverses everything, so I have to hold it like this. So here is my graph for 724. So I have my title, amount of fertilizer that affects the height of the plant. My height I labeled as my y-axis in centimeters, and the fertilizer, I think it was measured in what? Milliliters. I should have put ml there for fertilizer. So I did my intervals on my x by 5s. I did my intervals on my y by 10s. And that was just based on me looking at the table and seeing what numbers would work the best for my intervals. And that I chose those, and it worked pretty well. So then I just graphed the points. So the fertilizer was my x, and the plant height was my y. And here's all my points. And then I actually put a line of best fit, and I think it might have us do... No, that's good. I put a line of best fit just to show the trend, the upward trend of the scatter plot. All right, so that was 724. 725, so if we were in class, I would have assigned one graph per team, but since we're not together, we're just going to do them all, and that's fine because it didn't take too long. But let's look at team 2, and that's 725. So here's what I got for team 2. Does the depth of seed in each pot affect the plant height? So I did depth of seed on my x-axis, height, same thing with my y. I kind of kept height the same for each graph, so height was always my y-axis. And then I just plotted the points. I did not put a line of best fit here, but you could if you wanted to. And I notice a downward trend with that one. And I'm just plotting the points from the tables because I'm looking right at my CPM. There's my table. Here's my graph. Okay, for team 3, it said, does the number of seeds in each pot affect the plant height? And I put number of seeds as my x, height is my y. I did the bottom by 1s, and then I did the height by 5s this time, because it made sense with the table, because the table, the x's are going by 1s, so it wouldn't really make sense to go by 5s, because then the graph would be really like jumbled up in one area. So here's the points that I plotted, and we can see that it's really, I'm not noticing too much of a trend. It's kind of going up and then down, up and then down. All right, so that's team 3. Team 4 does the size of the pot affect the plant height? So here's my diameter of the pot. So the diameter is just, here, where's my pen? Do I have my pen? Maybe not. Wait, where did I put my pen? Okay, here we go. So diameter just means if you have a circle, oh boy. Come on, pen. Sorry, that's a bad circle. But the diameter is from one side of the circle to the other. So if this is my pot, this is the diameter of the pot. Okay. So I put 3, 6, 9, 12. I did it by 3s on the x-axis. Height, I did the same as I always did, and I did it by 5s. I did it by 3s because in my table it says 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. And we notice again, there's not too much of a consistent trend for this one either. Lastly, Team 5 said, does the number of hours of sunlight per day affect the height of the plant? I put amount of light on the x-axis. I put the height on the y, did the height by 5s, and I did the amount of light by 2s, but I counted starting from 1. So 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and I did that because the table showed me that. So I just followed the table. And here we can see an actual trend, a consistent pattern of the points going upward. So those were the graphs. And I'm just going to keep the camera like this because this is working for me now. So it says, for 726, examine your scatter plot for Team 1 from problem 724. Also look at the other scatter plot posters, and that's what I just showed you. Then answer the following questions. Part A, for each of the graphs, does there appear to be a relationship? Describe the relationship by completing the appropriate sentence below. As blank gets larger, then blank gets blank, or there appears to be no relationship between blank and blank. Excuse me. Whew. Okay, where? Oh, here it is. So for 726, we are looking at all the graphs. Sorry, you're looking at all my work. We're going to look at all the graphs and we're going to fill in that sentence. So as blank gets larger, blank gets blank. So at this one, I can see that as the amount of fertilizer gets larger, the plant height gets taller. And I think that's exactly what I wrote for A. As fertilizer gets larger, plants get taller. Yep. Okay, so then for the graph, for the second graph for Team 2, I'm noticing that as the depth of the seed gets larger, okay, because here's the depth of the seed at 3, 6, 9, 12, the height of the seed gets smaller. Let's see, did I write that down? I hope I did. As depth of seed gets bigger, plants get shorter. Perfect. Okay, so for Team 3, I'm not really noticing anything significant here. So I put that there appears to be no relationship between the number of seeds and the plant height. All right, for the fourth graph, which is actually on this side, I'm also noticing that there's really no relationship here. There's no consistent pattern. So for part D, I put there is no relationship between the diameter of the pot and the height of the plant. For part E, it looks like there is a relationship between the amount of light and the height. So it looks like as the amount of light gets larger or increases, the height of the plant also increases, and that is what I put. As the amount of sunlight increases, plant height increases. So that is 726. Oh, and that's not A through E, that's actually like, that's part A of 726. All of that. So then part B is direction of association. So this is a new concept, and I'm going to put it on the computer. I'm going to read it. In a scatter plot, if there appears to be no relationship between the variables, then the points in the scatter plot have no association. But if one variable generally increases as the other variable increases, there is said to be a positive association. If one variable generally decreases as the other variable increases, there is said to be a negative association. So here's some examples. Here's the positive association, where it looks like that upward trend goes up and to the right. Here's a negative association where it kind of starts up and then it goes down as you move to the right. And then no association is kind of no consistent trend going on. So for part B, it says to review each of the graphs that we just did and decide on the direction of association. That is, decide if there's a positive, negative, or no association. So let's look at them. So graph 1, it's got that upward trend to the right, and that corresponds with the positive association. So for what part are we on? Part B of 726, I put A for a positive association, right there. Okay, so part B, which would be team 2, I'm noticing it starts up kind of high, and then it starts to have a downward trend to the right, and that corresponds with our negative association graph. So that would mean that part B is a negative association. Team 3 had this graph, and this one there is no consistent pattern, so that corresponds with our no association direction. So I put, so far we've got a positive, we've got a negative, and now we have a no association. For the 4th graph, again, no downward or upward consistent pattern, so that would be a no association. So we've got positive, negative, no association, no association. In the last graph, we do see an upward trend, like that first one, and that corresponds with our positive association. So here's our order: positive, negative, no association, and positive. Okay, so that's kind of a new concept for us. And our other new concept we're going to talk about is called form of association. So when there's a positive or negative association, the shape of the pattern is called the form of the association. Associations can have a linear form or a non-linear form, and the form can be made up of clusters of data. So here's some examples. Remember, linear, all linear means is like a straight line. Non-linear just means curved, so a curved line. So here's a negative linear association. So it's got starting way up here and it goes down. That's a negative linear because it's in a straight association form. This one's a negative nonlinear because it's more of a curved form. And this one is a positive linear because it's going up and to the right, and it's not curved, it's kind of straight. And it's also clustering down here, and it's clustering up here. All right. So now it says to review each of the graphs that we just did. We know that it has an association, and we're going to decide on the form of the association right now. So whether it's linear, nonlinear, and whether it has clusters or no clusters. So let's look at the first one. So I'm looking at a pretty linear form here. So the first one for part A would be linear. For team 2, the book says nonlinear, and I could agree because it is kind of curving down. It's not a straight linear line. So that would be a nonlinear. Team 3 would be none, because there is no positive or negative association here. And then, oops, you just saw my answer. Team 4, again, would be none. There's no form here. It's not positive or negative. And for team 5, I would say that's a linear. Looks up to be up in a straight line, and it has a positive association. So our order there was linear, nonlinear, none, none, and linear. Almost done, kind of. So now, we're moving on to the last part of this problem. This problem had a lot of parts to it. We're going to be looking at outliers. So an outlier is a piece of data that does not seem to fit into the pattern. Do there appear to be any outliers in any of the example scatter plots above? Oh, that wanted the example scatter plots. Let's see. I would say for this one, this seems to be an outlier right here for this little guy, because he's not associated with the rest of the data. And as far as the other ones, doesn't seem like there's any outliers. Maybe that one, maybe, because he's kind of farther away. But yeah, I would say for the first part of part D, I would just say that this negative linear graph shows an outlier. So now for part E, it says go back and look at your team predictions. Were your predictions accurate? And explain your reasoning. So now we're going to go back to our original hypotheses, and we're going to check and see if they were accurate. So for the first graph, as the amount of fertilizer increases, the plant height increases. And that would be true. It is an accurate hypothesis. For part B, the deeper the seed, the shorter the plant, and I think we confirmed that because the height got shorter as the depth of the seed increased. So my hypothesis was correct so far for A and B. For part C, the greater number of seeds, the taller the plant. This one was not confirmed because there was no, the graph does not show a relationship between that and my hypothesis. There's no pattern. So part C is nope, not accurate. My part D, the bigger the pot, the taller the plant. Let's look at it. Again, there is no association here. There's no real pattern. So my part B was also incorrect. So far I got 2 for 4. And then my last one, part E, the more sunlight, the taller the plant. Seemed to be an accurate hypothesis. So I got 3 out of 5 of my hypotheses correct. Maybe you got more, maybe you got less. So I put for part E, I put 1 yes, 2 yes, 3 no, 4 no, and 5 yes. 3 out of 5. Okay, last problem. So, when there is an association, predictions can be made. One way to help make predictions is to draw a line or curve of best fit. Oh, that's why I drew the line. That's why I drew the line of best fit for part A. So team 1's data, we're going to show a line of best fit. This is how I showed mine. It doesn't have to go exactly through the points, but it needs to just follow that pattern. And I kind of made it kind of equal, so I've got like 1, 2 above, 2 below, and 2 are kind of through it, so it's pretty even. You don't want the line like way over here because that doesn't correspond with the points. You don't want it way over here. You don't want it curved, okay, because it's a linear association here. So that would be part A. Part B says, use your line of best fit to predict the height of the plant when 12 milliliters of fertilizer are given to the plant over a 3-week period. So let's go back to the graph. It says our goal fertilizer for part B is 12. So I'm going to go to probably where 12 would be, and I'm going to go probably right here. And I am going to go up until I'm kind of at the line of best fit, and I meet it, and I met it right here, and that's about 20. So I put approximately 20 centimeters would be the height of the plant if you used 12 milliliters of fertilizer. And then for part C, it says, what is the y-intercept? Interpret the y-intercept in this situation. So the y-intercept, remember it's that point that would cross this line, the y. And since I'm not touching it, I'm just going to take a kind of a guess. I put 10. I put the y-intercept might be 10 because I might be a little off with my line of best fit. So I put 10. You can put anything close to 10. Could have been 8. Kind of looks like 8, maybe 9. So I put y-intercept might be 10. And that means, what does that even mean? That means it's the height of the plant when the experiment started. So the plant didn't start at 0 centimeters. When we started the experiment, it started somewhere around 10 centimeters. Okay, and I put that answer right here. All right, that was quite a long lesson, And hopefully you were able to follow along, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.